It's now 1 p.m. Geneva time, so we can launch the event. Excellencies, dear delegates, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to welcome you today for a new session of our series in preparation of the 2025 meetings of the Conference of the Parties to the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. We look forward to welcome you in person to Geneva at the end of April. This series involves different stakeholders in order to help you dive more into the topics of the upcoming BRS COPs, and we'll conclude on 10 April with a briefing co-organized with the Secretariat of the Conventions. Today's event is co-organized by the Australian Council of Trade Unions in partnership with the Pesticide Action Network UK, IPEN, Solidar Suisse, and the Union Aid Abroad APEDA. We are joined today by leading experts to discuss how the fundamental change in the human rights landscape with the adoption of the right to a safe and healthy working environment as a fifth fundamental principle and right at work that every ILO member state is required to respect and promote is contributing to increasing the visibility of occupational health and safety victims of hazardous chemicals. The discussion will also focus on what steps need to be taken to make governments more aware of the urgent need to increase the effectiveness of the Rotterdam Convention to align its implementation with these fundamental human rights. We would like to warmly thank Liam O'Brien, Assistant Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, who has been the main architect of this event. Bernard Herold, who is a Senior Advisor for Decent Work and OSH at Solidar Suisse, will be facilitating the event.
Thank you very much. Also, very warm welcome from my side to all of you to this Geneva Environment Network event, The Right to Know, Modernizing the Rotterdam Convention, Road to the 2025 BRS COPs. So as mentioned by Diana, my name is Bernard Herold from Solidar Suisse, and I'll just very briefly give an introduction to this event before handing to the first speaker. Workers are the first and last users of chemicals, with more than 1 billion workers worldwide exposed to hazardous substances. Tragically, each year, as a result of these exposures, more than 1 million workers usually die. In June 2022, the International Labour Conference decided to amend the ILO Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work to include a safe and healthy working environment as a fundamental principle and right at work. This landmark decision, elevating the right to a safe and healthy working environment, means that all 187 member states of the ILO now have an obligation to respect, promote, and realize this new fundamental right. Today's event will show how this important decision is creating greater awareness of occupational victims and of hazardous chemicals and is encouraging stronger action to prevent exposures. Today's panel brings together experts in the areas of occupational safety and health, human rights and international law and the environment, along with real-life experiences of workers on the front line of hazardous chemical exposures. It will highlight not only the importance of a rights-based approach to occupational safety and health and chemicals management, but also the valuable role that the Rotterdam Convention, and in particular its PIC procedure, can play in enabling these rights, and specifically the right to know. In doing this, we will highlight not only the important role that the Convention can play in preventing hazardous exposures, but also the challenges that it is currently facing in failing to list chemicals that have met all the criteria for listing. Today, we are joined by three experts and global leaders in chemical safety. Halska Grasik from the International Labour Organization, Dr. Marcos Orellano, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights and Toxics, and finally Kay Williams, the head of the new Global Framework on Chemicals. In addition to these experts, we will present two case studies that highlight the devastating human cost of failing to list certain hazardous chemicals to Annex 3 of the Rotterdam Convention. This sort of brings me to the next speakers, which will actually present a case study, which is sort of in this area of obscuring. But first, let me introduce them. So Philip Hazelton from AFIDA. He has worked in international development, industrial relations, and occupational health and safety for 35 years. He has been based in Southeast Asia for 18 of those years, including Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and previously he was the national OHS coordinator of the Australian Manufacturers Workers Union and worked for the International Labour Organization in Vietnam, also for 5 years in industrial relations. He has been working on asbestos hazard awareness and eliminating asbestos-related diseases in Asia and Australia for many years. And for most of the last 7 years, he has been coordinating the Asbestos Not Here, Not Anywhere campaign of Union Aid Abroad, AFIDA. He will also be joined then by Leo Yogapranat, who has been active in legal aid organizations, providing legal aid for more than 9 years before working for Lion Indonesia, including advocacy for workers. Leo has been the Director for Public Policy and Advocacy at Lion Indonesia since 2023. He has been responsible for advocating the dangers of asbestos in Indonesia by encouraging changes in laws and regulations related to asbestos and providing assistance for workers in the field of occupational health and safety. And the case study which the two of them will present is precisely in this area of encouraging changes of laws in Indonesia, and it relates very directly to the Rotterdam Convention. It's a very interesting case study, and I'm looking forward to hearing from both of them. So over to you, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. And while we wait for the presentation to come up, can I just say a few words? Next slide, please. So as Bernard mentioned, I represent the Global Justice Organisation of the Australian Trade Union Movement, that is Union Aid Abroad, AFIDA. And we're supporting a range of partners around Southeast Asia, Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. And Australia is suffering a terrible legacy of the past use of asbestos, mostly chrysotile asbestos. Still, we see 4,000 deaths every year in our country, even though we stopped using the material more than 20 years ago. So with this tragic legacy that we're facing in our country, the Union Movement for Australia, with support of the Australian government, international supporters as well, has sought to warn the countries still using this material, principally now in Asia, of the deadly risks. Indonesia remains one of the biggest importers of asbestos, as we'll hear shortly. One organisation we're working with closely in Indonesia is this NGO Local Initiative OSH Network, or LION Indonesia. LION is based in West Java and works to raise awareness on health and safety issues, and in particular asbestos hazards, protect workers and consumers in Indonesia from asbestos exposure and disease, and bring justice to the many victims. So we'll hear from Leo shortly. The work that we're doing constantly, we're told by governments, especially in the Asia region, the importance of the Rotterdam Convention in guiding them in creating and dealing with hazardous chemical legislation. The prior informed consent provisions for listed chemicals are very important. But what's happening with the convention? In the case of chrysotile asbestos, a class 1 carcinogen, responsible, as we hear from the World Health Organization, for 70% of all workplace cancers in the world, banned in 73 countries, responsible for over 200,000 deaths globally every year, recommended for listing on Rotterdam Convention for 20 years, blocked at each COP since 2006 by a small number of conflict of interest parties. This situation is made possible by the need for a total consensus among the parties before a listing is possible. I think it's a classic example of what we just heard from Marcos of the disconnect between scientific knowledge and policy. So chrysotile is blocked from listing onto the convention. But in the last 12 months, we've had witnessed in Indonesia an asbestos industry new tactic of misrepresenting the Rotterdam Convention to justify in court bringing civil legal action against consumer groups and NGOs, aiming to intimidate and punish them for trying to protect consumers and aimed at blocking health warning labelling on asbestos-containing materials. Probably a fairly classic strategic lawsuit against public participation. I think it's called a SLAP. This case study tonight and today we'll hear from Leo, examine a stark example that is unfolding for Indonesian colleagues, and particularly of the unintended consequences of non-listing of a recommended chemical on the Rotterdam Convention, that is chrysotile asbestos. Okay, let's hear from Leo on the situation they are facing. Over to you, and next slide, please.
Okay. Thank you, Philip, for the introduction. First of all, as a Friendship Alliance Indonesia, I'm very grateful to have been invited to this event and given the opportunity to convey what is happening regarding the struggle for the right to know about the dangers of asbestos in Indonesia. So, in this slide, in Indonesia, asbestos is heavily used since 1950. More than 1 million tons chrysotile asbestos imported in the last 10 years. And 95% of the chrysotile asbestos using as mixture for construction product. Mainly, it's using on rooftop containing asbestos material. In Indonesia, at least there is 27 factory producing asbestos containing material. So based on the data from Bureau of Statistics of Indonesia, there are at least 13,000 households using asbestos rooftop containing material. So we can see this is the 10th province in Indonesia with the largest percentage of asbestos roofing as the main building material on 2024. We can see Jakarta as the national capital of Indonesia. They got the highest percentage of using rooftop asbestos material. It's 54.68% people using the rooftop. Beside Jakarta, there is Bangka Belitung Island, Riau Island, Banten, West Java, Lampung, South Sumatra, East Java, West Nusa Tenggara. So there is still a lot of rooftop asbestos containing material using in Indonesia. Asbestos still widely used in Indonesian construction. Chrysotile is still legal to use with condition, but supervision of its use is still very poor. Other types of asbestos are banned. So in Indonesia, the asbestos only still used legally is chrysotile. But chrysotile included as a dangerous and hazardous material in the government ruling. After asbestos is classified as a toxic and hazardous material product containing asbestos, including chrysotile cement roofing, do not include hazardous information label on the product sold to consumer, because the regular Ministry of Trade Regulation did not regulate about the labeling the dangerous hazardous information label on the product. So, Lyon Indonesia with KSM Yayasan Nota Budi or the non-governmental protection or consumer protection organization are pushing for consumer right to information on product containing asbestos. We registering a lawsuit to the Supreme Court, cancel or to revisation, which does not require asbestos cement roof to include information label on the danger of chrysotile asbestos. So this is the chronology. Lyon Indonesia and INABAN. INABAN is Indonesian Ban Asbestos Network. Conduct since 2010, conduct the campaign to eliminate asbestos related disease in Indonesia. So in 20 December 2023, Lyon and LPXM Yasana Budi submitted the judicial review lawsuit to the Supreme Court against the Trade Minister Regulation number 25/2021, additional sheet B number 5, that about the rooftop containing the asbestos material. In 19 March 2024, the Supreme Court granted our review. our judicial review. So in 18 July 2024, the Indonesian Fiber Cement Association (FICMA), or they are the corporation of almost 11 or 20 factory that product the asbestos. They use asbestos material in the rooftop. They file a lawsuit to us on an unlawful act lawsuit at Central Jakarta District Court. And we will talk about it on the next slide. But yes, this is in 18 July 2024, Fiber Cement Manufacturer Association (FICMA) filed a civil lawsuit against those that won the labeling case in March. This is what Philip said before. This is the classic slap. Slap is often filled by corporation to aim to intimidate or to silence critic by burdening them with the cost of legal defense, forcing them to abandon their critic or opposition. So FICMA tried to shut us down with this legal lawsuit. Next. This is the petition of unlawful act submitted by FICMA on July 1994. They said on the lawsuit that the white asbestos or chrysotile is chemical language MGS is a chemical matter protected. They say chrysotile asbestos is protected by the law number 10 year 2013 about approval producer upon the first basic information for secondly dangerous chemical and pesticide international trading, or about the Convention Rotterdam. So Indonesia has ratification about the Convention Rotterdam on the law number 10 year 2013. So they say, FICMA said that the asbestos chrysotile is protected by the Convention Rotterdam. And they stated that the Rotterdam Convention had been held several times, in which the last time was on May 1 till 12, 2023, which was attended by more than 170 nations and resulted in the addition of annex or attachment. That until Rotterdam Convention ended in 2023, there was no agreement relating white asbestos or chrysotile as a dangerous material. And next, the Indonesian is one of member Rotterdam Convention that I said before. So the Indonesia must submissive and obedient to the Act number 10 on the law number 10 year 2022 about ratification of Convention Rotterdam. So the basic of the lawsuit that the FICMA stated that chrysotile was not agreed listing list in COP. Chrysotile not listed on Rotterdam Convention. It was not agreed as dangerous material that need to be prohibited. And FICMA claimed that Supreme Court decision inconsistent with non-listing of chrysotile on Rotterdam Convention, that LPKSM Yasana Natabudi and Leon misinformed judge on the Supreme Court on chrysotile asbestos. Next, the thing that I want to speak about the lawsuit FICMA state on the justification that in point 3, FICMA said that they claim that 170 countries present at the Rotterdam Convention, COP 11/2023, have agreed not to list chrysotile or white asbestos as a hazardous material. Based on that, FICMA needs to expand investing industry that use asbestos, white asbestos or chrysotile, because the asbestos, white asbestos not ratified on Annex 3 in the Rotterdam Convention, and they want the judge on the District Court Jakarta declare white asbestos chrysotile is harmless chemical. They sought Inaban to withdraw or demote or delete the news on Inaban website as long as the matter was about the asbestos chrysotile. Sought the defendant to apologize to national print media and television media, demand defendants to pay the plaintiff opportunity loss 1% every month from 7.986 trillion, and declare the white asbestos chrysotile is non-hazardous material. So Figma, they dare to say that because the white asbestos is not listing in Annex 3, so they claim that 170 countries present at the Rotterdam Convention have agreed not to listing chrysotile. But it's very different with the fact we read on the Convention Rotterdam reading about the Convention Rotterdam on the next presentation. Please next. So the next, if we want to understand, okay, next. So this is our our fighting in to protect worker and consumer in Indonesia regarding the danger of white asbestos. I will read the closing statement before I give it back to Philip. That in Indonesia, we want a landmark victory. Our Supreme Court ruled that the asbestos-proof product must carry clear health and hazard label. This decision was not just a legal milestone, it was a moral reckoning, affirming that no community should be kept in the dark about the dangers of chrysotile asbestos. But the industry fought back. An association challenged the ruling in a district court, attempting to silence transparency and perpetuate the deadly status quo, misusing the Rotterdam Convention. But yet again, justice prevailed. The court rejected their lawsuit, upholding the people's right to know. This victory belonged to not just to Indonesia, but to all of us fighting for accountability in the shadow of asbestos-linked disease and death. Our struggle for the right of worker and consumer mirrors many others around the region and the world. For decades, the asbestos industry has operated globally with the same playbook: deny, delay, and divide, and block listing on chrysotile on the Rotterdam Convention. They misinform government about the health hazard of their product. Now they are trying to block consumer, even having basic knowledge about the hazard of the product, and are trying to silence our voice. Figma are appealing our recent court victory. Let's see where this goes next. The misinformation about the Rotterdam Convention they used to justify the court case was a dangerous new tactic. So far in the court, we have won an important precedent, mandating health warning label both for worker and consumer. Thanks. I'll give it to you, Philip.
Okay, and next slide to finish off, just a summary. So I think the important thing here is that the lack of prior informed consent for countries like Indonesia and direction there on regulation for this substance in particular, which is so dangerous, stands out as one of the failures of the Rotterdam Convention and the paralysis also that Marcus talked about. It's a very blatant example of the boldness of misrepresentation of the Rotterdam Convention by the asbestos industry, in fact trying to help sell their hazardous materials. So I think, yes, it's a very tragic example of misuse of the Rotterdam Convention, even as a marketing tool. But it also, of course, puts so many more consumers and workers at risk when they don't have that information that was talked about in the ILO Convention. So this legal actions brought against the consumer groups is a false approach in terms of the Rotterdam Convention. It's very cynical, and it's been quite, a big attempt to intimidate those advocating for public health. And let's see where it goes into the future. But certainly, I wholeheartedly agree. We all wholeheartedly agree with the view of Marcos expressed in terms of let's stop the paralysis of the Rotterdam Convention and reform the listing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for both of you for presenting this very interesting example, a shocking example actually, of how an international convention can sort of be turned into the contrary of its original intent. At the same time, I find it interesting the example that you made, because one of the questions in the chat was actually from Ilham Aziz. It was asking, how can we encourage and hold factory owners accountable for ensuring workers' right to know about the chemicals they handle and the associated risks. And what you have achieved in Indonesia is, in a way, a response to that particular question on how can factories be held accountable by actually trying to get a legal decision which actually, from your Supreme Court, which actually says that the factory owners must inform not just the workers, but also generally who uses these materials later on, these processed materials, these roof sheets, to inform them about the risks. So I think that way of through legal channels forcing that this right to know is implemented is a very important avenue to ensuring that workers have the right to know and receive the relevant information. And as we heard before, they have a right to information. Really hope that at least some of the chemicals up for the listing discussion at the upcoming Rotterdam Convention will receive the support from all parties present and reach the consensus so that they can be listed, so that the information flow for those pesticides and chemicals can be substantially improved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also to you, Bernard, for moderating this event, and to all those who were able to join us or will be later watching the video of the event. Just wanted to bring to attention the next event in this series in preparation for the BRS Cups. It's taking place tomorrow at 11 a.m. Geneva time, and we will be discussing a new guidance under the Stockholm Convention. There are a few more other sessions under this series that have also been confirmed. Some of them are on this slide, not all are here. One will be relating to human rights, and also the final briefing with the Secretary will take place on the 10th of April. And I just also wanted to remember what Kay mentioned before. There's an IMC webinar taking place tomorrow that she referred to earlier. It's taking place at 1 p.m. Geneva time, and you can find more information on our website, because we also map there what's happening in international Geneva. So with that, thank you very much to all. And as always, you will find the summary of this event on the page that has been, and the link has been shared on chat. See you soon.